Good morning. I'm Melissa Diamond, and I'm the Executive Director at Wellspring here in Gloucester. I live here in Gloucester. I've lived here for 25 years. And I've spent the last 30 years working in nonprofits in Massachusetts, in Boston, and north of Boston. Much of that time I commuted, and then I finally was able to get land right here where I live, and I'm thrilled to be doing the work that I do with everyone at Wellspring, including Melissa Buchanan. And my first introduction to this congregation was through the books at our former Holiday store. And we used to be that pretty much the entire book collection was provided by this congregation. And then now there have been so many other ways that we have connected. In my time, I've been at Wellspring for 9 years. And the opportunity that resurfaced again for the Hovey apartment has been really incredible for us. So I thank you, and I'll talk a little bit about how it fits into everything else we do. So my background is in public health, and what that means is I think about systems and trends and how to get systems working in a way that helps to heal some of the problems in society and our community. So I think of Wellspring as one really important opportunity to try to get the resources flowing in the right direction for members of our community, for all of us, including folks who are really struggling. So our mission is to inspire families and adults on the North Shore to achieve employment and financial security. And we do that through stable housing, education, job training, and career readiness. So we did a strategic planning process about 5 years ago to really try to hone in on who are we today and what are we about and how do we make sure that we're heading in a thoughtful direction. And so it's really about financial security. So we want everything we do to lead towards that goal. And if we didn't live in such an expensive part of the country, or it wasn't this day and age, maybe we would be focusing on something else. But because we are where we are, and really the biggest threat, I believe, to families and people doing well is how expensive it is to be here. Housing, gas, food. This part of the country actually has had the most rapidly increasing rental market of the entire country. It may not be necessarily that the rent is higher than New York or San Francisco, although it's competing pretty darn well, but it's been increasing more rapidly. And so in terms of what that means for families and how people can possibly keep up, it means that any increases in wages are not nearly enough to keep pace with what it's going to cost for people to pay rent, let alone buy a house. So someone might first come into Wellspring's presence through a crisis. It could be through the fact that someone doesn't know how to pay their rent. We have something that we call the homelessness prevention line, so that anyone who is in the local area can call and say, I don't know how to pay my rent, or I just got an eviction notice. I don't know what slide's on there. Here, I'll just take a peek. You may go back to the second one? Yeah. Great. I'll keep my thought and then I'll speak to that slide. Or they may have just lost their job, or they have a back utility bill that they don't know how to cover. And what we'll do is we'll meet with them and get a much better sense of what is your income, what are your expenses, who's in your family, what's going on, and really help to put together a very concrete plan around that moment in time. And the goal is for the plan to lead to further stability. We're always thinking about how is what we're doing right now, how is what you're going to do right now going to lead to the next step and the next step and the next step. And where we came up with that, why we think of things that way, we get to it really honestly. Wellspring started in 1981, and 10 years in, the staff and founders at the time paused and interviewed the 80 families that had lived with Wellspring over that first 10 years to say, what else do we need to know? And the resounding comments at the time were, we obviously need a place to live, but it's not enough. We need opportunities for education, we need opportunities for better jobs so that we can be healthy and sustained longer term in the community. So that's why Wellspring started to expand its mission in the mid-1990s. So they did a big addition, and we have an education center, and many of the programs that we have today were originally tied to those early understandings of needing to offer more. So in addition to the crisis support that we do, we have a family shelter, we have a team that's focused on homelessness prevention. We also have English for speakers of other languages, and that's the work that Melissa is embedded in doing every day. We are a GED, a high-set testing center, so for the high school equivalency test, we're a testing center through the state of Massachusetts, so anyone can come take that test here in Gloucester. The next closest place to do that is in Wakefield, so it was really important that we started to do that. We do lots of work inside of Gloucester High School with folks who are getting close to graduating, whether they're juniors or seniors, people who don't have viable plans after high school. They either don't know where they're going to school, think they can't go to school, think they can't afford it. A lot of folks will say, I'm just going to get a job, but they don't really know what that means and don't understand that that job, whatever you might be thinking about, is not going to pay enough to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And then we also have a specialized job training team that's based out of Salem Hospital in Salem, and we have a lot of expertise, particularly around healthcare, and we work in a very deep way with the human resources teams at Mass General Brigham and then in the Beth Israel Lahey system we do training and internships and job shadows and then place people in jobs in local healthcare systems. So all of those things sort of wrap up together. And the way that I think of it, if you want to go to the next slide, is we're unusual because we balance different areas of work. It's not common for, at least in Massachusetts, for nonprofits to do these two different things. Most organizations, they're either focused on homelessness prevention and shelter, and they might have 200 units of shelter, and that's what they do, and they do it well. Or an organization might be a training organization and focused on adult education, but they don't have the housing or the homelessness prevention expertise. So I and the rest of us over the last number of years have been talking a lot about how can we take advantage of the fact that we have these different areas of expertise. And we're really on the cusp of sort of looking at every program and trying to figure out how do we balance these skill sets. And so, for example, if someone's in our job training program in Salem, the last thing we want is for someone to leave that training program because they can't pay their rent and they need a job and they leave a month early. When we have other staff in the organization who focus entirely on housing, right? So we're doing a lot of work to make our programs more holistic, to really look at things proactively with students and program participants to forecast where the trouble might be and how to make sure that the time that they're spending with us is really connected to a longer term goal. And then the other piece that's unique is that because we are half of our funding is privately raised, it means we have a lot of flexibility about what we do. So if we only relied on government funding, then we would be very restricted in our ability to who we could serve, for how long, and in what way. And because we have more flexibility, thanks to this congregation, lots of other congregations, family foundations, events, and donations, it means we can say, oh, okay, the government, the state's going to pay for us to work with this particular group, but we actually think the group that needs support is this big. And these folks, meet this particular income guideline, but at this day and age, it's actually this many people who need support around housing. And that's where the partnership here for the Hovey apartment comes in, because we can then get to know a partner in the community that has an unusual opportunity and say, all right, we can make this work. We're gonna roll in the work of the family that's living in this apartment along with what we normally would do for any family. We have people who do this kind of work, and that way we can stick with the family the entire time that they're living here instead of someone at the state saying, well, we will help pay that rent for the first year, but now Wellspring's not funded after that. Another organization that was more restricted would say, okay, well, we can't work with that family anymore. But because we have private dollars, we can say the salaries, the wages of this staff are funded from 3 or 4 different sources. So we can add this family to our caseload and do the work the way that we know we need to for the family to be sustained longer term. And really, it's simply because it just takes a while. If someone is going from not working or working a lower wage job to moving towards being much more self-sufficient, they're either going back to school or they're working and working their way up. And it takes years. It doesn't take a year. It takes 2, 3 in order for someone to really get far along down the road. So for any family that's living here, it means that we're around and meeting and communicating with that family regularly. And as things happen, because things happen, someone gets sick or hurt, or there's an interruption in their work time, we're going to be involved and help people get connected with the resources that they need. I'm going to pause for a moment. Do people have any questions about what I've said so far? Yeah, I hear.
Are there other churches that provide study house-like benefits?
Not housing yet, right? So we would love for that to be true. One of our goals is to be really building a network of landlords, I would say. I mean, you're so much more than a landlord, but folks that we have a housing partnership with. And there are landlords who own buildings in Gloucester who now, when a unit is vacant, they call us and say, I have a unit opening up. Do you want to work together? Those are not landlords that decrease the rent. They're landlords that have a much closer to market rate rent. But they're offering an opportunity of an apartment to someone who might not outcompete another tenant. So we are getting the first opportunity when that unit opens up. And the reason why it's hopefully they're similar to our relationship, landlords like to work with us, is that there are a lot of landlords who like to do the right thing. They like to rent to people who could really benefit and be helped by that opportunity. But they also need the stability of knowing that their income is going to come in. And so Wellspring helps to provide that stability, because if the family is faltering in any way, or there's something that happened that's unexpected, we're there to help make sure that the family is able to pay the dollars or get assistance and to keep that situation whole. What other questions do folks have? So in terms of our impact, we end up connecting. It's close to 2,000. It's about 1,900 folks a year are either calling us for support or participating in one of our programs. And of those, you can go to the next slide. And is there one more? Is that the third or is that the fourth? Okay, great, perfect. And of those, it's about 450 folks are in a program with us doing what I would say is more intensive work. So they're in our English for Speakers of Other Languages program, which means they're with us regularly throughout the week. They're working hard on their English proficiency. We're getting to know them. They might be a senior at Gloucester High School, which means we're in one of their classrooms every week and providing mentoring and career advising. They might be in our job training program in Salem. And we're really working on increasing that number. Over the next 4 years, our intention is to have that number get to be 1,000, so that it might not be that we're working with more people, because we already are touching close to 2,000 folks, but we want 1,000 of them 4 years from now to be people who are working with us more intensively. And the reason is that the impact is that much better for people and families when we know each other well, and when we're really helping to take care of and put plans and help people put plans in place more holistically. And so, for example, one of the things that Melissa and I will be working on this coming year is we're going to be doing more work within the English for Speakers of Other Languages program. So that traditionally is a quality program where people come to improve their English skills. Folks who have been in the U.S., have arrived in the U.S. relatively recently. But the question is why? Why English? Why now? How does it fit in with the rest of your life? And for most people, it's because they need that skill in order to work and in order to move up in their work environment. So we're going to start to be providing more support around the job part of it. Where are you working now? Where have you worked before? What were you doing before you arrived in the U.S.? How does this particular moment in time of English get you to your next step, and how can we be more mindful of that and bringing resources around the education and job piece? And so that's a good example of, we already are working, I checked yesterday, so far this year, it's 136 people have been in our English for Speakers of Other Languages program. We're already working with close to 140 people. And how can we do that in an even more impactful way? So those folks, a year from now, 2 years from now, will be able to say, not only did their English improve, but they got a new job and their wages went up by this, which is going to also make it true that they're more housing stable and better able to raise their families and be comfortable in the community. So I hope you'll stick with us. The partnership that we have here is really meaningful. It's a good example, we hope, to other organizations that may have housing. And if we have that opportunity, I may call upon any one of you to be a reference and help to endorse this kind of partnership. It's not about one family, it's about that particular family at that moment in time, but it's also about what we learn in doing that work. We get better at what we do each time we work at it with a family, and then there'll be another and another and another, we hope. And so there are lots of ripples that go out that way. And I think what I'll say, just in response to hearing about dinners or meals at 302 Essex Ave, the sensibility of Wellspring is really an important part of who we are. And so if you're an organization where staff and program participants are literally living together and sharing that kind of living time, it really informs how the organization, whoever the staff are, thinks of itself. And so what I'll say to that is, I really believe, I know it's true, that we are all part of one community. We are all part of the same community. And I just happen to be at this moment in a place where I can be helpful. And tomorrow, it could be the other way around. It will be the other way around someday. So one example of that is we have a mom who's worked with us for a long time, who's a hospice nurse. What are the chances that she might be in my house someday or my parents' house someday? I literally, this actually happened to me this year. There's someone who was in our job training program who now has a great job at a gastroenterology practice in Beverly, and so she's connected to a particular surgeon. And my son had to have a procedure, and someone left a message on my machine, so my son had given my phone number, my voicemail. I'm calling for Ari Diamond Putnam. This is Lucia from Dr. Shields' office. Well, Lucia is a graduate from one of our programs. So I got to call her back. I was like, Lucia, it's Melissa. That's my son we're talking about. So, we really are together in this. And I have a lot of humility about that, and looking to be part of any way possible people's success moving forward. It's better for all of us. It's better for our whole community each time a family is more comfortable and thriving. So thank you for the time, and any creative ideas or questions that you might have about more that we could do together, I would love to talk about it.